You push open the rusted iron gates, and the world inside hits you like a wave. The air is thick with the stench of sweat, smoke, and blood, an intoxicating perfume of suffering and desire. The ground beneath your feet is damp, not from rain, but from the constant spill of flesh pressed to its limits. Chains rattle in the distance. Somewhere, a man groans not from combat, but from what was done to him after the training had ended. To the outside world, these men are gladiators, heroes of the arena, worshipped like living demigods. But as you step further into the camp, the illusion shatters. You see not warriors, but captives. They are owned, branded, and paraded. Their worth is not only measured in how they fight, but in how they are desired. Chroniclers whispered of Roman matrons, their eyes burning with forbidden hunger, bribing guards for secret encounters. Noblemen, drunk with power, reduced these fighters to playthings, stripping them of dignity behind closed doors. Even the youngest recruits, trembling and fresh from the slave markets, found that the price of survival was often paid not with skill in combat, but with their bodies. Graffiti scrawled on the walls of Pompeii still testifies to Rome's lust. Crude sketches, names of gladiators etched with longing. Celadus makes the girls sigh, one reads. Yet behind the sighs lurked humiliation, coercion, and unspoken rituals that turned flesh into spectacle. This is not the polished tale carved on marble. It is the forbidden chronicle Rome tried to bury. You are not here to witness glory. You are here to see what happened when the gates closed, when the crowd dispersed, and when gladiators were no longer warriors, but offerings to Rome's darkest appetites. You stand in the heart of Rome, where the air hums with a feverish energy, the slave market, the place where bodies are bought, sold, and stripped of every shred of humanity. The smell of sweat mixes with the sharp tang of bronze coins and incense, creating a stench of commerce that clings to your throat. The auctioneer's voice cuts through the chaos, booming like a priest at a perverse ceremony. Strong shoulders, perfect teeth, a warrior's chest. One by one, men are dragged into the light, forced to stand naked as the crowd inspects them like cattle. Their eyes are lowered, their silence demanded. To the Romans, these men are not soldiers, not brothers, not sons. They are flesh-living merchandise to be consumed in the arena, and beyond it, you notice the women first. Draped in veils, seated in shadowed corners, they appear almost invisible, but their eyes burn with hunger. They whisper to their attendants, their lips curling with anticipation. Roman matrons, some from the most powerful families in the empire, have not come here for weapons or chains. They have come for what gladiators represent, forbidden's desire. Juvenal, the satirist, once sneered that no husband was safe when gladiators walked the streets. To these women, scarred bodies reek of danger, and danger is irresistible. You watch one noble woman signal with the faintest nod. A heavy ring of gold passes discreetly to the auctioneer. Moments later, she secures not just a fighter's life for the arena, but exclusive access to his body. Graffiti across Pompeii's crumbling walls still echoes this obsession. Celadus makes the girls sigh, one inscription declares. Another reads, Crescens, the net fighter, is the delight of all women. These words are not romantic, they are confessions, carved into stone, revealing a lust Rome never dared to hide. But the branding is the darkest spectacle. When a man is purchased, his flesh is scorched with the mark of ownership. Letters burned into his skin, sometimes simple initials, other times humiliating symbols. Some bore phallic brands, mocking their masculinity while declaring them property. The hiss of hot iron meeting skin is followed by silence, the silence of submission. You imagine the smell of burning flesh rising with the smoke, while the crowd watches without pity. Look at the muscle, feel the arm. An auctioneer cries, forcing a gladiator to flex as bidders reach out to touch him. Fingers press against scars, test the hardness of thighs, weigh the breadth of shoulders. Laughter bursts out as one man is made to turn, his body inspected from every angle. To refuse would mean lashes. To resist would mean death. You see it in their eyes. Some stare at the ground, retreating inward, while others burn with a rage they cannot unleash. Yet to the Romans, none of this matters. What matters is the transaction. Flesh for coin, strength for lust, life for entertainment. Here, in the market of flesh, the fate of gladiators is sealed long before they ever touch a sword. They are not warriors yet. They are property. Bodies stripped bare, branded, bought, and sold. To the crowd, they are exotic animals. To the empire, they are fuel for blood and lust. And to you, standing in the heart of the market, one truth becomes terrifyingly clear. In Rome, flesh is currency, and gladiators are nothing more than the coin. You slip into the narrow corridors of the gladiator barracks. The air is damp, heavy with sweat, straw, and iron. Outside, the city of Rome sleeps, but here the night is alive with whispers and footsteps that do not belong. A torch flickers in the distance, revealing a figure cloaked in silk. She moves with purpose, her perfumed sweet myrrh and roses clashing against the stench of blood-soaked training yards. She is not here for prayer. She is not here for mercy. She is here for him. For centuries, rumors swirled about Rome's most powerful women and their forbidden obsessions. Chroniclers whispered that even Faustina the Younger, the empress herself, burned with lust for the men of the arena. Her desire was so notorious that ancient gossip claimed Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, was forced to tolerate her infatuations. Whether myth or truth, the story reflects a reality Rome did not deny. Gladiators, though slaves, were the ultimate objects of forbidden passion. Juvenal, the biting satirist of Rome, wrote scornfully of women, mad with desire for the sweat of the arena. He described noble ladies abandoning their dignity to pursue the rough hands and scarred chests of fighters. Pliny, too, mocked those who longed not for the crown of the victor, but for the dust that clung to his body. To the elites, gladiators embodied a raw danger that no senator, no polished aristocrat could provide. The visits were never innocent. Guards, bribed with coins heavy as temptation, turned their eyes away. Doors creaked open at midnight. The cloaked women entered not as lovers seeking affection, but as conquerors demanding possession. Imagine the scene. A gladiator, still bleeding from training, chained to his cell. The silk of her hand brushes against his scarred skin. She does not ask, she commands. For him, refusal is impossible. Defiance could mean lashes, starvation, even a cruel execution staged for entertainment. Submission is survival. Some women return from these encounters with pride, parading the scent of sweat and blood as proof of their conquest. One satirist sneered that they came back, stained with dust, painted with shame, yet smiling with satisfaction. The darker truth? For the gladiators, these liaisons were another battlefield, except here there was no honor, only humiliation dressed as desire. You hear the faint scrape of sandals against stone. Another woman arrives, her veil drawn low. She leans to a guard and slips him a gold coin. His hand tightens around it, and the cell door opens with a groan. Inside, the fighter lowers his head, knowing what awaits. His body is not his own. It belongs to the empire, to the crowd, and tonight, to her. This is the paradox of Rome. The same women who attended temples, who offered sacrifices to gods, came here to indulge in lust that defied every moral law. They desired what was most dangerous, most forbidden, most intoxicating, the touch of men marked for death. And for the gladiators, the chains of iron were not the heaviest. It was this, to be both despised as slaves and worshipped as objects of lust, to be hunted not just in the arena, but in the shadows of the night. Here, behind locked doors, pleasure was not freedom. It was just another form of slavery. The gates grind open, and the sound hits you like thunder. 50,000 voices erupt, filling the Colosseum with a frenzy that shakes the stone beneath your feet. You watch as the gladiators march forward, their bodies nearly naked, their skin glistening under the sun. Oiled muscles gleam like bronze statues brought to life. The audience doesn't just see warriors. They see flesh raw, vulnerable, and exposed. Every scar tells a story, and every scar feeds desire. The Romans knew this. That is why fighters were paraded half-dressed, not simply for freedom of movement, but for spectacle. They were living idols, carved not from marble, but from blood and sweat. The satirist Juvenal once sneered that women of Rome swooned for gladiators, not for their nobility, but for their scars, their broken noses, their sweat. It is the dust and blood they love, he wrote with contempt. And as you look around the stands, you understand what he meant. Women leaned forward, their eyes hungry, not for the fight, but for the bodies that move like predators in a cage. The combat begins. Steel crashes against steel, and the crowd roars with every strike. But beneath the violence lies another current. The audience gasps not only at the skill of the fighters, but at the spectacle of domination. One man forces another to the ground, pinning him with raw strength. The crowd cheers louder, not for the kill, but for the display of power, the sight of sweat dripping down straining muscles. You catch a glimpse of the walls behind the seats' graffiti, scratched into the plaster of Pompeii and Rome. Celadus makes the girls sigh, one reads. Another declares, Crescens is the delight of all women. These are not idle doodles. They are confessions, carved in stone, testimonies of a city's lust. But it is in defeat where desire becomes humiliation. When a gladiator falls, the victor stands proud, while the loser is stripped of dignity. Sometimes his armor is torn away, his body exposed to the jeering masses. The crowd laughs, mocking not just his failure, but his flesh. Some historians even hint at darker moments fallen men degraded, groped, or assaulted as the ultimate display of domination. For Rome, humiliation was entertainment. You can almost hear the cries now. A fighter lies beaten in the sand. His weapon is gone, his hands trembling. The crowd jeers, throwing scraps of food, even bits of refuse, as he crawls for mercy. A nobleman sneers from his seat, shouting, "Show us the man beneath the armor." The crowd erupts in laughter. The arena becomes not only a stage of blood, but a stage of desire twisted into cruelty. Here, gladiators are not men. They are performances. They are symbols of lust, domination, and shame. Every drop of sweat, every scar, every cry of pain feeds a hunger that is older than Rome itself, the hunger for flesh on display. You look again at the sand, stained with blood and oil. The fight may end, but the performance never does. For the Romans, the arena was not only a theater of war. It was an altar of desire, where strength, lust, and humiliation were sacrificed for the crowd's insatiable appetite. The roar of the arena is gone. What remains are the shadows. You step into the dim barracks, where the air is thick with sweat, smoke, and the faint sourness of unwashed bodies. The spectacle of the Colosseum is a world away. Here, the silence is heavier, broken only by whispers, muffled laughter, and the occasional groan in the dark. In this hidden world, survival has its own rules and its own currency. Flesh. A guard leans against the doorway, torchlight painting his face in cruel orange. His eyes settle on a gladiator broad-shouldered, still bleeding from the day's fight. Bread dangles loosely from his hand. No words are spoken, yet the bargain is clear. Submission for survival. A piece of bread, or perhaps a lighter training schedule tomorrow, in exchange for a night of obedience. Some agree, because hunger leaves no room for pride. Others resist and find themselves punished with harsher drills, longer chains, or fewer rations. The power is never equal, and the guards are not the only predators. Older fighters, veterans hardened by years of blood and sand, claim their own spoils. When new recruits arrive young, unscarred, still trembling with fear, they are not greeted as brothers. They are prey. You hear it now, the stifled whimper of a boy, no older than 16, dragged behind a wooden partition by men twice his size. His initiation is not a ceremony of honor, but a violation masked as tradition. To the camp, his body is part of the training. To survive, he must endure. Ancient accounts whisper of these brothel-like barracks, where gladiators were bought and sold not just for combat, but for pleasure. Some were forced to serve wealthy patrons in secret chambers beneath the arena. Others became the property of their lanista, their trainer, who could loan them out like stallions, their worth measured in coin, flesh, and submission. The historian Suetonius tells us that even emperors blurred the line between sport and desire. Nero and Commodus kept gladiators not only as fighters, but as companions of the bed. These men, celebrated in the sand, became objects of lust behind closed doors. But for most, there was no luxury in it. Only survival. Food, a softer bed, a promise of safety in the pit all, could be purchased with the body. For some, it became routine, a second battlefield no less brutal than the first. You imagine lying on the hard stone floor, the straw mat scratching your back as footsteps approach. You do not know if they bring you bread, or something far worse. In this place, your body is no longer your own. It belongs to hunger, to fear, and to whoever holds the power tonight. The arena may decide whether you live or die, but the barracks decide how you live while you wait. And in this hidden economy, the price of survival is always the same. Flesh offered in silence, shame swallowed in the dark. The night is thick with smoke and whispers. Torches flicker against the stone walls, casting long, quivering shadows that look more alive than the men who kneel beneath them. You are one of them, bare-chested, trembling, sweat clinging to your skin. The air is heavy with incense, but beneath it lingers another smell: flesh, fear, and something more primal. Before you stands an altar streaked with old blood. Behind it, robed figures chant in a language you do not fully understand, voices low and rhythmic like the pulse of a heart. These are no ordinary prayers. They are bargains, offerings, promises made to gods who demand more than words. A priestess steps forward. Her eyes gleam in the torchlight, cold and knowing. She does not speak, but her hand runs slowly across your chest, down your stomach, claiming you not as a man, but as property of the divine. Around you, others bow their heads, too afraid to resist. The ritual has begun. The Romans believed that blood alone was not enough to please the gods. Victory in the arena required more. Fertility, lust, and death were threads of the same tapestry, and gladiators, already half dead in life, became perfect vessels for this devotion. You hear whispers of older rites, where before battle, a chosen fighter would be led to a sacred chamber. There, under the gaze of priests or priestesses, his body was taken in the name of Venus, goddess of desire, or Nemesis, goddess of retribution. The act was not seen as shame, but as sacrifice. His pleasure, or his pain, was an offering to ensure the gods favored his sword the next day. Some believed that lying with a gladiator meant absorbing his strength, his raw power drawn from survival itself. Wealthy patrons, high-born women, even priests themselves, many sought these men not just for lust, but for what they thought was sacred energy, stolen through flesh. You imagine it now. A man forced to the ground, his wrists bound, while the robed officiants chant louder, their voices rising like the crowd in the arena. A priestess lowers herself upon him, her breath hot against his skin, whispering, "The gods claim you tonight. Fight well tomorrow." He is no longer his own. He belongs to superstition, to ritual, to something far older than the games. Ancient writers leave fragments of these whispers. Tertullian condemned the gladiator cults, calling them temples of lust and blood. Others hinted that sacrifices of the flesh were as common as sacrifices of animals. And in Rome, where nothing was separate sex, violence, death, they were all tangled into one ritual of survival. Your knees ache on the stone floor. The priestess's touch lingers on your skin, and you know you cannot refuse. To resist is to invite the wrath of gods, or worse, the punishment of men who enforce their will. Tomorrow, the arena may kill you, but tonight, the gods take their price in another way. The chants grow louder, the torches flare, and you understand what it truly means to be a gladiator, not just a warrior of blood and sand, but a sacrifice of flesh and spirit, offered again and again to gods who are never satisfied. The streets of Pompeii are alive with whispers. You walk past crumbling walls and sun-baked stones, and your eyes catch something carved into the plaster. Not prayers, not politics, but names. Names of gladiators, scratched by trembling hands, wrapped in crude hearts. Crescens makes the girls sigh, one graffiti declares. Another promises undying love to a fighter, whose face may already lie in the dust of the arena. These words are not written in secret. They are carved boldly, as though loving a gladiator were not shameful, but intoxicating. You begin to notice them everywhere, on tavern walls, in alleyways, etched beside the doors of brothels. Rome may worship its emperors, but here in Pompeii, it is the gladiators who are adored, not as men, but as living fantasies, objects of lust and danger, branded into the hearts of those who never step into the sand. And when the real men cannot be touched, imitations appear. Prostitutes don crude helmets, leather straps, mock armor that clangs as they sway through the streets. For a price, they promise the fantasy of a gladiator's embrace, sweat, muscle, brutality, all packaged for desire. A grotesque theater outside the arena, where lust becomes just another form of blood sport. After the games, the obsession only deepens. The roar of the crowd fades, the sand is stained with blood, and yet the night is far from over. You picture it, a victorious fighter slipping into the darkened corridors, only to find admirers waiting, women veiled in secrecy, young men trembling with excitement, even nobles cloaked in shadows. They whisper, they beg. Some fall to their knees, not in worship of the gods, but of flesh and fame. For the gladiator, it is both power and prison. You are adored as a god, but you are owned by their hunger. Each touch, each desperate plea, strips away another piece of your freedom. You belong to the crowd, body and soul. Not everyone welcomes this worship. Ancient writers mock husbands who fumed as their wives swooned over gladiators. The poet Juvenal sneers of noblewomen who prefer the sweat of the arena to the perfume of their homes. In his satire, one wife leaves her marriage bed to lie with a scarred fighter, her lust stronger than her vows. Imagine the rage. A wealthy Roman, humiliated, powerless as his wife whispers another man's name, someone he considers beneath her, a slave, a killer for sport. Yet in the arena, class means nothing. To the crowd, scars are medals, and danger is the greatest aphrodisiac. The obsession was so fierce that even death could not kill it. Inscriptions were found mourning gladiators long gone, words of lovers who never truly let them go. Some even carried amulets of gladiator blood or sweat, believing it held magical powers of virility and desire. To them, a gladiator was more than flesh. He was a living spell. And as you walk through Pompeii's narrow streets, the truth presses in on you. These men were not just fighters. They were idols, fantasies carved into stone, lust and death intertwined, desired by all, owned by none, and yet, in the end, still slaves of the crowd. The palace hall glows with firelight, but you feel no warmth. Gold shimmers across the walls. Polished marble reflects torchlight, and perfumed air hangs thick with wine and sweat. Yet beneath the music and laughter, there is an unease, a quiet reminder that this gathering is not about celebration. It is about power. You watch as gladiators are summoned inside. They are not called into the arena, but into chambers of velvet and shadows. Tonight, their weapons are stripped away, replaced with chains of desire. To the Romans, they are still slaves. To their masters, they are something worse playthings. The emperors themselves were not immune to this hunger. Nero, history whispers, delighted in surrounding himself with gladiators. He did not see them as men, but as living ornaments to be dressed, undressed, and commanded at whim. And Commodus Rome's infamous gladiator emperor indulged in spectacles far darker than the sands of the Colosseum. For him, the fighters were not just warriors. They were his property, his entertainment, his flesh to use as he pleased. You imagine the moment. The banquet is in full swing. The nobles recline, feasting on roasted meats, their fingers slick with oil. Then the emperor gestures. Silence falls. A group of gladiators is led in, stripped, paraded, forced into acts that make the guests laugh, gasp, and cheer. For the rulers of Rome, this was not lust, it was dominance, an orgy of humiliation where everybody bent to imperial will. Some gladiators were ordered into noble beds to satisfy emperors or their favored courtiers. Others were paired against their will, their intimacy turned into spectacle before an audience drunk on decadence. They were not lovers. They were performances. Every touch, every gasp, staged to amuse. Refusal was unthinkable. To deny a Roman noble's desire was to invite death. Some were executed quietly, their bodies discarded like spoiled wine. Others were punished in ways designed to entertain the mob stripped of dignity, forced into the arena unarmed, torn apart for the amusement of the same crowd that once adored them. Roman writers hinted at this cruelty. The satirist Juvenal sneered at noblewomen who slipped into the beds of gladiators, but he also revealed something darker, that these men, worshipped by the public, were despised by the elite. They could be worshipped one night and destroyed the next, their worth measured only in how completely they obeyed. And imagine the mind of the gladiator in such moments. You are summoned, dressed in silk instead of armor, ordered to smile when you want to scream. You are touched by hands that see you not as a man, but as a novelty. You are fed grapes and honeyed wine, but they taste of poison. Even in moments of supposed luxury, you are not free. You are a prisoner wrapped in velvet chains. The torches burn low. The laughter rises again. For the emperor, this is pleasure. For the gladiator, it is survival. You belong to the palace tonight, just as you belong to the arena tomorrow. Owned, commanded, consumed. Rome's appetite has no limits, and even its most adored warriors are nothing more than toys in the emperor's hands. The roar of the crowd fades into silence. The sand is still wet with blood, but the spectacle is over. You stand in the hushed arena, staring at the body of a gladiator who only moments ago was cheered like a god. His chest no longer rises, yet even in death, his fate is not his own. Slaves rush forward, dragging the corpse aside. But before the sands are raked smooth, figures emerge from the stand's noble women, veiled and trembling with excitement. They carry small vials, cups, scraps of linen, and then you see it. They kneel beside the dead man, pressing cloths to his wounds, collecting the still warm blood as if it were holy wine. They whisper to each other, breathless. A drop will keep him faithful, another will make him burn with desire. To them, this is not death, it is alchemy. Roman writers tell us that women drank gladiators' blood, believing it held the power of strength, lust, and devotion. To consume it was to consume their vitality, to bind it to their own pleasures. But darker whispers slither through the empire. Some claim that bodies of the fallen were sold in secret, carved apart, their flesh boiled into potions meant to ignite desire. The gladiator, once a man, now reduced to an ingredient in Rome's insatiable hunger. And there are rumors Rome rarely admitted aloud, of women sneaking into chambers where corpses were laid, drawn not to living flesh, but to the forbidden heat of a body not yet cold. Necrophilia, whispered as superstition, as scandal, as the ultimate act of possession. For if you could not have the gladiator alive, you might take him in death, his silence ensuring he would never refuse. You imagine it now. The moonlight spilling through a torch-lit chamber, a body stretched across a slab of stone, perfumed women leaning close, trembling hands tracing scars, lips brushing skin already pale. A horror cloaked in ritual, excused by whispers of magic and destiny. Even beyond the grave, gladiators were stripped of peace, their bones displayed, their ashes stolen, their very essence turned into charms. A lock of hair tied to a lover's wrist, a sprinkle of ground bone stirred into wine. In death, as in life, they were never free. Historians like Pliny and Juvenal hinted at these obsessions, mocking the women who thirsted for gladiators' blood. To them, it was proof of Rome's sickness, a society where lust and death merged, where desire fed upon suffering. And as you stand there, watching women gather around the body, you feel the unease settle deep in your chest. The gladiator's humiliation does not end when his heartbeat stops. His final act is not his own. He is consumed, violated, turned into relic and potion, into fetish and charm. The crowd has gone. The torches burn low. The sand has swallowed his name. Yet his body, his blood, still belongs to Rome. Death was meant to be an escape, but here it is only another stage, another performance, another appetite to be fed, the final humiliation. You step back from the ruins of the amphitheater, your hand brushing the cold stone. The air is silent now, yet in your ears the echoes remain, the roar of thousands, the crack of whips, the final cry of a man who never chose to fight. You can almost see them again, gladiators stepping into the sand, their bodies shining with oil and blood, torn between survival and spectacle. They were warriors, yes, but also prisoners of flesh. To Rome, they were not men at all, only bodies to be consumed, bodies that fed the empire's hunger for violence and for lust. The marble statues you see today, the triumphal arches that boast of Rome's glory, they do not speak of the women who drank gladiators' blood, or the nobles who used their sweat as perfume. They do not whisper of the humiliations suffered in secret chambers, where desire and death twisted into one. These scars were carved into flesh, not into stone, and yet the truth lingers. Rome's greatness was built not only on conquest, but on obsession, on the exploitation of flesh, on the fantasies of the powerful pressed onto the powerless. Behind every cheer was a silence. Behind every victory, a degradation. As you leave the ruins, the stones seem to breathe, as if still holding the memory of screams, of fevered whispers, of forbidden acts no historian could fully erase. And you cannot help but wonder, have we truly changed? Or do we still hunger for the same spectacle of flesh, dressed now in different arenas, broadcast not from the Colosseum, but from screens that fill our homes? The faces are different. The world has changed. But the appetite, has it ever left us?